Hey everybody, Dave Whitmarsh, CEO Whitmarsh Consulting Group. Thanks for spending some time with us today. Hopefully we can answer some of your questions when it comes to what these experts are seeing in the compensation space. I put this panel together because they come from a vast different perspective on how they handle comp. And I'm pretty comfortable in saying that if there are any questions that are asked out, then we'll be able to answer them. So this isn't going to be a deck run. This isn't going to be anything like that. It's going to be questions after we do some intros here. So who are these experts? So I'll give you some time to sort of talk about yourself, but Bob, if you want to introduce yourself and DecuSoft.
Yeah, my name is Bob Lorenzo. I'm CEO of DecuSoft. We offer a compensation management software automation tool for executive variable pay called Compose, and I'm happy to be here today with all of you.
And Klaus?
Hi, I'm Klaus. I'm CEO at Percival.live. Percival is the only tool for fair salary setting among people in team. When you have a collaborative, multi-skilled team, when it's really hard to appraise people, do performance appraisal, and see which individual has contributed the most, my tool helps the team do this, like splitting a pie, right? The salary pie.
And Cassandra.
I'm an author and I'm the CEO of Total Reward Solutions, and we want to be your trusted partner for compensation solutions. And so we operate in the space of market benchmarking, base pay design, executive benchmarking, and then bonus and incentive compensation plan design.
Perfect. And tell us about your book.
The book is Compensation Sense 101. It's divided into 8 chapters, and it is in a Q&A format. So it's easy to pick up and put down, and it's great to have on the shelf as a reference tool. Maybe, this week you don't need to know about base pay, but next week you do. And so it's meant to be just a real, simplified way of explaining compensation to everyone from the new human resources employee all the way up to the CEO.
Perfect. Okay, so really what we're going to do here is we're going to go through these questions. I'm going to pull this off the screen. You don't need to see them, but these are the questions, and then we'll come back in and share some contact information. But it is, I'll be monitoring chat, question and answers. And seeing how Bob gave me the first question, I figured it'd only be right to set him up with that. So we continue to hear a great deal about the Great Resignation. Yep. And of course, do a little pretty faces are over top of that. What are your thoughts on how compensation plays a role? So let me stop sharing and go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, so the Great Resignation is clearly a prevalent topic today in HR. There's a lot of folks leaving companies more so than ever, and it's also hard to get good qualified people. So the question becomes, what can you do as an organization to attract and retain talent and mitigate risk of losing key employees and high performers? So there's a multitude of ways to address that, from making sure your pay is competitive, doing some analyses on how your competitors are paying for top performers and making sure you're in line with them. And there's also some creative ways of doing things, such as sign-on bonuses and some other forms of incenting people that you have to do differently than you perhaps have done in the past. There's also a way of ensuring that you're communicating better to your employees by ensuring they know what their total rewards and total compensation packages are. Oftentimes, there's non-cash type incentives and things that an employee is eligible for, the cost of their their benefits, some of their deferred comp. So by providing communications to them, making sure they can make informed decisions so they really know what their aggregate compensation plan is in total, should they leave, and what they potentially could put up in risk. Another thing that we're seeing as a result of the Great Resignation is some interesting ways of skipping promotions, or like a skip level promotion or multiple level advancement. So if you have a high performer or a really talented individual that ordinarily would have to progress from point A to B before they got to C, making a use case for them to go to A to C because of the talent as a rising star. We've also seen an interesting thing where some of the vesting schedules are getting reduced to incent people. So if you had a 4-year vest, you would accelerate them to a 2-year vest to minimize some of the people losing as well. So those are just some of the trends and the things that we read and see about.
And Cassandra, what are you?
So I'd just like to share actually a couple statistics with it. So the labor force participation rate in October is only 62%. That's the lowest that it's been since the mid 70s. And as Bob mentioned, we had a 3% quit in September. That's the highest it's been since 2000. And there's a lot of survey data out there that says 1/3 of your current workforce is planning to leave their job soon. And so what we're seeing is people are moving for more dollars, and they know they can get it right now because it is, I would say at this point, more of an employee market than I have ever seen it in all of the time I've been in human resources, where it's been an employee market.
And Klaus?
So one take is like paying people more, right? Throwing money at the problem. And another important aspect is fairness, transparency in the process. Like Bob said, you should keep your talent, maybe have shorter vesting periods. But how do you know who your talent is in your team, right? If you have a 5-6 person team, it's easy to know, right? Even you as a manager, you can know. But if you have like 30, 40, 60, 100, 300 people in your team, how do you know who the key players are, who contributes the most, right? It's really hard to assess this. And there was a pay scale survey, right? They surveyed over 500 employees, and they found that the process transparency, the fairness in the pay process was five times more important than the actual pay compared to the market. So the fairness and transparency was a much larger factor than actually simply getting more money. There are stories of managers who gave people raises and people left because the raises were unfair. So they threw more money at the problem and they had a worse result. So Percival is a tool that helps the team. It's like when you do like a school project, right? You have like 5 people doing a school project. Typically 1 or 2 people do the project, and the other 3 will just put their names on the project. The teacher might not know who these are, but the team knows exactly. So it's a tool that allows the team to share, slice a pie and say, look, we believe this is the contribution that each person has given.
Well, I can personally thank goodness that my teachers never had that. Is there? We're going to move to the next question. So, if there's anything that you guys from the audience want to jump in, it's probably easier for us to keep it formulated. So, per question. So, feel free to jump in at any time. So. Question 2, there's an ongoing discussion on the employee excellence, the EX, and the criticality okay, good luck, of creating an environment that attracts and retains talent. How does compensation fit into the EX? So Bob assisted with that question. So, but Cassandra, do you understand that? Did you want to take a crack at that, or do you want some clarification on that?
I mean, I can take a crack at that. I mean, we all know that happy and satisfied employees equals satisfied customers. So to me, that's the easy part, right? And it's really time that we have to rethink our work culture and how the work gets done. I think that's an important part of the employee experience. And then just ensuring that the employees are being paid fairly relative to the market for their work. It sounds really simple, but you'd be surprised how many don't check their market rates. You know, they don't know if they're competitive or not. And they only find out when somebody turns in a resignation. So that's how I feel the employee experience, you know, fits in with compensation. If, you know, those are creating great client experiences, then you want to reward them so you can hold on to them, because we all know that a lot of times clients follow employees if they move.
Klaus?
Yeah, a big part of employee experience is considering myself like an employee, right? How am I treated at the company? Am I treated as an adult or as a kid? So coming from the agile methods, from the agile movement, we want our teams to be autonomous, to be responsible, to be collaborative, to be multidisciplinary. We don't want to place people into very small boxes, very strict job descriptions. We want them to learn other things and help out. I come from the software industry, so I don't want to restrict people to be, you're a front-end developer, you're a back-end developer, you're a designer. I want the designer to learn front-end, I want the front-end to learn back-end, and the back-end to learn databases, and I want to treat people as adults, as responsible. And when it comes to compensation, this has always been like salary setting, right? Setting people's pay grades. This has always been the Achilles heel in agile management, because I hire people that are intelligent, autonomous, responsible, and I treat them as kids, and I say, look, I'm going to share the cake for you. You guys are not capable of sharing your own cake. I'm going to look, this is your slice, this is your slice. So I prefer to let the team, treat the team as adults and have them share their own cake. And this doesn't mean, like in traditional, like 360 reviews, people can give, the whole team can give everyone raises. You ask the team, okay, who has improved this quarter, and everyone, or this year, and everyone gets raises, right? It's like an inflation effect. So with our tool, it's a different question we're asking. We're not asking how much should each person get. We're asking, guys, you have to slice this cake, and the cake cannot grow, right? You cannot give everyone raises.
And how do you see it, Bob?
I think Cassandra summarized it best with the first thing she said, is that the better the customer experience, happy employees are going to always go above and beyond to deliver. And that ultimately is the end point of anything you can do to enhance the employee experience. I think that she also mentioned how the client often follows an employee, especially if they go in a competitive situation. And that is an inherent risk that you have to be aware of. And I also think you need to really look at, a lot of times an employee is going to leave, and the reason they left is not necessarily the company itself, it's their experience with their direct manager. So you need to really check with the managers and subordinates also, to see what type of feedback they give you from a 360 perspective on how is their relationship with the manager, what type of feedback are they getting, things like that, because a lot of times they're leaving because of their manager. And I think everything else kind of answered the question fairly well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so moving on to the next question. So what are some of the impacts on compensation due to COVID and its impact on compensation plans and short and long-term incentives? Have you noticed anything there, Klaus?
I think COVID and the Great Resignation, they're tied. They're similar questions because of the advent of remote work. So it's like a restructuring, like reshuffling. Okay, people are finding the best place for them without the restrictions of being geographically co-located. So now the experience is going to be much more remote than local. It's a similar question to the Great Resignation.
Okay. So and Bob, how do you see it?
Uh, I agree with Klaus in terms of the working from home, because it definitely changed the dynamics of things. I also look at it in terms of how did COVID impact compensation plans. Some companies obviously got hammered by COVID. You know, when you think of retail, the travel, leisure, airlines, and then others killed it, like, you know, the Amazons, the shipping, the technology providers, the pharmaceuticals. So they've all had to potentially change their compensation plans. Think of a company that got hammered, that executives are getting paid off of component-based bonus tied to shareholder value and earnings and things like that, or salespeople getting paid on revenue targets that have been dramatically declined and unprecedented through no fault of their own. So from a compensation perspective, you have to be able to modify and make changes to your incentive plans, again, because you want to keep employees happy. So you have to be able to offer some revisions to those plans and figure out ways to keep them incented by revising some of the parameters that were just through no fault of their own, not attainable. So that's kind of how I look at that from that perspective.
And Cassandra?
I totally agree with Bob. You know, you've got to adjust those goals when needed for sales, revenues, you know, things that COVID definitely hit. The other thing I would just add to that is, you know, the rising hiring rate. We've seen that, you know, climb and climb and climb, and that is causing major compression. I mean, we've seen clients who, you know, their first 4 or 5 pay ranges have now collapsed into one because of where they'd had to go with their hiring rates. So, you know, all those steps that were available to employees in terms of kind of a hierarchical, if you will, have gone away. So that's going to bring some new challenges with it. And then Klaus mentioned, you know, the work from home. We're also starting to see a lot of companies take back the cost of salary adjustments for geographical locations. So if you're no longer coming into the office, it's in the heart of New York, and, you know, you're working remotely somewhere, then they're taking those away. And that's causing some major concerns, as you can imagine, amongst employees. But some of the really big ones have announced, if you're, you know, if you're no longer in those major metropolitan areas, we're not going to pay the cost of salary in those major metropolitan areas anymore. So that's the other thing that we're seeing as a result of COVID in terms of effects on compensation.
Sandra, I agree 100%. We see and hear that all the time based on folks moving, but now there's the new world with working from home, where we've seen, you know, we're in New York, and in the financial services sector, we've seen employees that live in Colorado and other states instead of being in New York City, and they're making a very good income, and you make X amount in Colorado versus New York, it's appreciably a better lifestyle. But at the end of the day, they're getting their job done. So the question is, do you pay for where you are geographically, or do you pay for the job itself? And now these workers are used to, oh, I can take my child to and from school. I can do things that I couldn't do when I was, you know, tied to being there every day of the week. And that's definitely going to impact things in the future, because I think employers are going to have to deal with that being a reality to one degree or another, no matter what. So I agree 100%.
Yeah, that's a great point, Senator. To be perfectly honest, I never really thought about it, which is actually the exact opposite of you know. I have a few relatives that are teachers, and I always think to them, well, you know, if you're a teacher, your job's to get in the school board in our area. They're all right across the province, are all paid the same. And it's like, well, your job long term is to get as close to school as you can, just to keep your or close to home as you can, to keep your expenses down. Right? And so why wouldn't you, if you have that opportunity to work from home, you know, move somewhere where your dollar stretches farther? So interesting problem. Yeah.
I also think, Dave, that I'm of the mindset that if it's really the job and how you're performing on the job, it shouldn't necessarily matter where you are. To me, it's more, what's the job description, and are you performing to the expectations at a minimum and or greater? That really, I think, the employers that get that and treat their employees like that, I think that's going to help the employee experience and make for a happier workforce.
Yeah, and truthfully, in the overall cost of that body, there's some things, it's not uncommon that that space, and if you're in the right spot in New York, that space that your garbage pails on is costing you $1,000, a year, right? So if you don't have to cover that cost anymore, and you can downsize that office, then there is a bit going back into the company as well. So.
Yep.
So, question here. In regards to remote work, are you specifically referring to folks who moved out of office location area? Those that work in geography that is remote and has, I haven't been able to get my glasses. I ran through this. That is remote, that is higher geo area, has a change occurred
in that regard
of that.
Yeah.
So did I butcher that up so badly that I need to take another crack at that?
No, I think I understand what they're saying. Basically, where we're seeing the cost of, salary adjustments, the geographical adjustments go away is when maybe someone used to be in New York, lived in New York, and now they can work remotely. And kind of like Bob said, they chose to go to Colorado where it's cheaper to live there. So some companies are kind of taking advantage of this, if you will, and saying, hey, we can save some dollars. We're going to pull back some of that geographical difference that they were getting. And that's what's happening. And it's some of the really larger companies who think about thousands and thousands, right, of employees all over the place. And it's a pretty big line item for them to provide geographical adjustments. But, I like Bob, are we really looking at what they're doing and what's the value of the job? Because I think that is also the most important thing.
And I think once the employee gets used to that and they get the flexibility and the comfort level of the benefits of doing that, and they are productive, it's going to be harder for them to want to go back to what was traditional or, the old way, so to speak. And from an employee experience in terms of trying to find talent, if you're looking for someone and one employee is saying, I need you here all the time, the other one's saying, no, if you're there and you're happy, but it's going to be a competitive advantage in terms of attracting people, in my opinion.
And it's going to be a really interesting impact in local economies. These economies, right, as you said, in Colorado and these other cheaper places, these people working remotely and bringing money in, they will move the local economy, and that will be really interesting. You'll decentralize the economy much more than having these huge like Manhattan and Los Angeles and these concentrated places. Will be very interesting.
So what's the backlash though? Let's say, if you're talking with a bigger company and you have 100 people, in a certain pay grade that move to cheaper areas, and then in those areas are serviced by people that haven't had their salary adjusted. Do they, did they start to complain?
They're going to be clients, right? They're going to be clients in these places. So probably they'll increase demand, and salaries will rise slowly as well too, from increased demand. Did I understand you correctly, David?
Yeah, I don't think so. So let me try it again. So let's say, you have an office, you New York guys are getting, base pay of 60 grand a year, and then your New Mexico team gets 45,000, and you decide that you're moving to New Mexico, and I understand what you're saying, that you don't necessarily want to adjust that person's pay. But, is there potential for a backlash from everybody in New Mexico, start to question why some of the other folks that, got paid or moved back home or moved into the cheaper area, are making significantly more?
David, I think that is definitely the case. Matter of fact, what you really got to be careful about there is, discrimination. And are you paying fairly for the performance, for the amount of relevant experience, for the time they've been in the job relative to one another? And if you're, honestly, if you're not taking those geo-analysis dollars away, in your example, you've got somebody making $15,000 more than the person sitting next to them who, let's say, is equally, equal skills, education, performance. Well, how are you going to explain that if you happen to get hit, by an audit from the Department of Labor or from OFCCP? They're not going to care that they had another 15,000 because they used to work in New York. What they're going to care is, are you paying people relative to one another for the job that they're doing in the same location? So not taking it away can be an issue for many reasons, unless it's justifiable. If that person going from New York or, to, New Mexico has, 15 more years of experience than anybody else, guess what? Then the pay is justified. And so you got to look at all those factors and not just what's the difference because of geographical area.
Perfect. Okay. So on to the next question though. Juana, what ongoing impact do you see as it relates to DEI and ESG in terms of compensation? I think we're back to you, Bob.
Yeah. Cassandra just gave a beautiful segue there with pay equity, equality, and transparency. So DEI is something that is, out there in the forefront for sure. I think what employers need to do a better job of doing, in my opinion, is be able to extract data in order to, if they do get an audit or have to justify or substantiate something, have accurate and timely access to data so that they can show kind of what they're doing and justify things. As far as the ESG, I think with some of the bigger companies, in terms of compensation, some of the goals on the environmental and social front are tied to longer term type of metrics. So I see them tied to long-term incentives in terms of, if you're trying to, lower pollution through your plants, get greener and things like that. Those tend to be longer term initiatives. So they would fit into what we call long-term incentive programs. So you'd be able to kind of track them a little bit. As far as the governance and executive pay, that just has to do with, CEO pay, stay-on pay, and things like that. And again, just being able to tracking and address those things. DEI and ESG are still very, very hot topics that we see every day.
Cassandra?
Yeah, let me just add to that. We see a lot of strategic planning, around D&I, but honestly, the E is getting forgotten, the entire equity piece, and specifically equity around compensation. And so I would have thought, with everything that's occurred the last couple of years, that our phone would be ringing off the hook to do discrimination analysis. And it's not. It is some, but not near as much as it should be. And many organizations aren't proactively doing the discrimination analysis to see where they are. And then, as Bob said, taking the time to document the differences and, what's justifiable and what's not justifiable. You want to do that before they walk through the door. Having been through one OFCCP audit myself, I mean, we were working 12 and 14-hour days to pull information out of files to document why our comp where it was for every person they were looking at. That's not a fun exercise as a fire drill. So it's much better for, employers to be doing these analysis proactively and seeing where their gaps are. And if they're doing them in conjunction with their attorney, then they're going to have client attorney confidentiality, privileged work products. And so they're going to have time to address those. And I say to people, look how long it took Starbucks to address their equity issues, 10 years. But look how proactive they are and how they started way before a lot of other people did.
And Klaus?
From a diversity point of view, I always think that we want to hire a diverse team, right? So I want to reduce biases, and to me it always comes to salary setting, right? Currently, like a manager or a small committee typically will decide what people's salaries are, and then these people can be biased. If it's a single manager or a small group of managers, right, the bias will stay there. So if I hire a diverse team, I want to let this team voice their opinion. So I want to have them, them to say what they consider fair for each person, for each contribution. So you can, spread out and dissolve and dilute any bias that there might be. So to me, it's no point on having a diverse team if they don't, they're not part of the decisions.
Okay, and so the next question, it's a little bit of a change of format. Instead, it's so we'll start questions directed to you, Cassandra. So what is the number one thing people are calling you with? Like, what's the hot button that they're having problems with?
It is the continuing rising rate of entry level employment coupled with compression because of it. Number one issue.
Is there a 1B?
Yeah, I would say 1B would be that people are, they're quitting before they even show up. So they accept your offer and they're scheduled to start in 2 weeks. And in 1 week, they call you because they took another better offer. So I say, go out with your best offer right out of the gate. Be sure that your offer is fair and market competitive. If you're trying to lowball people, they've got lots of options right now. And that's exactly what's going to happen. They're going to continue to look. And if somebody comes around with a better offer, I have one client who told me it took them 7 months to recruit an administrative assistant at an executive level because 2 people accepted offers. 2 people called a week before they were supposed to start and took other employment.
Cassandra, my daughter just entered the world of physical therapy, and she did exactly what the example you just portrayed, exactly what happened. She got an offer. That was a long, double the commute. She had an interview she didn't hear back from. She subsequently heard back between the time she had accepted and got the other offer for a job a half hour away. She accepted the latter job. So that is a real world scenario, spot on.
Well, and you hit it on the head, Bob. It's not always compensation either, right? This was a commute issue.
Correct. Comp was about even.
Yeah. Sometimes it's better hours. Sometimes it's work from home. Yeah. We know all the other reasons. But Bob, how interesting. I have a daughter who's currently in PT school.
Oh, well, I guess we can talk after. I'll share some.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll have a group webcast later on how to deal with kids that abuse. So.
Cool.
At the end of the call, we can get up and do some stretching exercises.
And what are you seeing there, Klaus?
The main complaint from people using the system is that it's subjective. Oh, isn't this a very subjective appraisal, right? We don't even try to be, objective with tons of criteria and tons of ratings and bars and stuff like that. Because in the end, someone has to take all the ratings and decide how much each person is going to make. Someone has to subjectively decide, either a manager or a small group of managers typically. So what we allow is we actually embrace subjectivity. Yes, we want this to be a subjective exercise, right? And we want the team to decide subjectively. So the fact that it's subjective doesn't mean that anything goes, right? We have to value, what the companies value, a good technical skill, helping other people, being collaborative, being proactive. It doesn't mean that I'm going to, Cassandra's my friend and, she brings cake in the Monday morning. So I'm going to give her a raise because she brings cake. So the fact that it's subjective doesn't mean that any opinion, any reason goes, right? But still, it is impossible in a collaborative team not to have a subjective step in compensation. And Percival lets you solve the step within the team. So
interesting. So while we're kind of touching on that, so do you guys have much, issues with organizations just training the managers on how to even do the reviews or how to even do the comp planning? Like what percent of time does that sort of eat up for you or them? Bob?
Say the question again.
So, I was just talking about the way that they do the reviews, and I know historically I've heard, multiple times over the years that a lot of times your line managers just don't even, they don't understand the process. So when they do the approval ratings, you have to kind of train them on, what's acceptable, and then you have to make sure that the grading process is that automated much, or is that still?
I think, I don't know if I'm the best person to answer this, but I think it depends on the company and the tools that they're using to do those reviews and performance appraisals. I have a son who works for a small private equity firm, and they're doing things on Excel and a Word document. Then there's other companies that are using tools that are going to be more consistent. At the end of the day, I think Klaus said this before, I can review someone differently than my peer because it's a subjective approach. It's like a figure skating judge, right? They saw 5 people and one of them gave an 8, someone gave a 7. There's always going to be subjectivity. I have a tool that manages comp, and we put the performance, the goals, and the merit and track it. But the other side of the equation are tools that are outside of my purview. So I think Cassandra or Klaus might be better suited.
Yeah, Cassandra, I'm really interested to because you're across multiple platforms, and multiple things and multiple company sizes and different structures. So your feedback would be pretty cool, I think.
It's going to echo what Klaus and Bob have both said, and that is the biggest problem in performance management is getting managers to accurately assess performance equally, if you will, or as close to the same as they can. There's some exercises that you can do sometimes that will help with that, but I don't think we're ever going to achieve perfection in this area because it is subjective. And the best you can do is train your employees, and to have them do some exercises which kind of help them to define, well, what is an exceeds employee versus an outstanding employee? How would we define them? What would they look like? That sort of thing. That helps. The other thing is, it's not really peer review, but it's
Calibration phase.
Yes, thank you. Calibration.
Mm-hmm.
We did that when I worked for an insurance company, and we had a very large HR department. So all the HR managers would get together and we would present our people and get feedback. And I'm telling you what, you learn a lot. How somebody performs in front of you sometimes is very different how they perform in front of someone else. And so, yeah, we would really learn where our entire HR team's strengths and weaknesses were. And we might have thought we had an outstanding employee, but by the time we got through that collaboration process, we learned we didn't have an outstanding employee. Thank you, Klaus. Couldn't think of the word.
Yeah. Some of our clients, David, they spent, some of the managers there spent like 22 hours every performance cycle just in the calibration phase. A manager with 80 employees below him, like 6 or 7 teams, 22 hours every performance cycle. And the teams themselves spend days doing reviews and one-on-ones and stuff like that. So with Percival, you reduce that. You have like a cake that is sliced in 80 slices, and you say, look, this is the team's opinion. This person should get 2% of the cake. This person should get 2.5, 3, 4, 5. So it's much easier to do calibration when you have the team's view already there, without having to. And the problem is, such a calibration meeting is always closed doors. You can't have a calibration meeting with 5 managers and 80 people sitting in and watching. So it's closed doors and it's subjective. Even if you do your best and you try to be fair, you'll be perceived as being unfair, because it's closed door process. It's subjective. So the more you can get of input from the team, the better.
Okay, so we're going to jump to the next question, and thanks for putting it in the chat. I appreciate that. So what are we seeing that are trends versus permanent issues? And is it possible to wind the clock back, right? So I'm sure there's a bunch of CEOs that are out there saying, hey, listen, comp department, you're asking for a whole bunch of, money here. And so where do I, when do I get it back, or is this going to be forever? Is this the new baseline? So what are you seeing as far as that going? I forgot my order. So let's start with Sandra.
So the trends are, we do see merit dollars going back up again. And we do see what I'm calling buying of talent right now. We've got scarcity, so we're having to buy talent. The permanent issues are the compression and how long is this continuing rising rate going to occur? But here's the thing, and I keep telling all my clients this, once the rates go up, they don't come down, okay? So you move to that $15 an hour start rate, guess what? It's not coming down. And, you know, sometimes skills will fade though. So think about Y2K. Look about how much we paid people to do Y2K, you know, back then. Skills will fade, especially in the IT technology area, right? You know, Microsoft's hot today, something else is hot tomorrow. But this, you know, right now, this buying of talent, and I have some people who get offended when I say that, quite honestly, they literally get angry with me. And it simply means there is scarcity. And yes, you are having to really buy talent right now. You're probably having to pay more than you ever have had or ever want to. But again, we got 62%, you know, labor force participation rate. Do you want people or don't you?
Klaus?
What do you mean, Cassandra, by labor force participation rate?
So that's basically what percent of the workforce is actually working. It's called labor force participation rate.
So the inverse of unemployment? The complement of
yeah,
unemployment?
Yeah.
Sort of? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the trends there was a trend like in the, you know, mid 2010s, which was companies abolishing performance appraisals altogether, right? Throwing the baby away with the bathwater, because no one likes, you know, you don't have to do reviews and have data. No one likes performance appraisals. They suck. They're really bad. But the problem is they had no alternative, right? What are you going to do if you don't have performance appraisals? How are you going to pay, you know, give people raises? And the only answer a few gurus, HR gurus gave was to train your managers better. You know, when you don't have an answer, throw more people and more discussion and train them. And, you know, there was no answer. So many companies are already, this is a trend that's already fading back. People are coming, you know, coming back with performance reviews, but they have other mechanisms in place like one-on-ones and continuous feedback and data points, so that this appraisal, this review can be, you know, more can be better simply. So this is the trend I can see, you know, already receding. As we, you know, with automation and you know, this abundant, you know, production of food and goods that we have with richness being created, we are competing with people who are investors, right? They're investing in startups who are simply exploring new ideas, new business models, and they will fail. And these investors, they like invest in 10 companies, only one of them will succeed and the other 10 will fail. They're literally throwing money away. They have so much money that so we are competing with companies that can actually fail and throw money, you know, out the window practically. And I don't know, this doesn't seem to be a trend that will fade anytime soon as we get, you know, more automation and richer and stuff like that. Much of this richness will you know, what will we do with all this time, right? Will we be you know, doing art and playing the park? No, we will be working and searching for other business models, and it will be really hard for you know, traditional companies to compete in that space for talent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And David, I would just add, I don't know if the group has seen, but there's a little bit of a trend, I guess, because of the buying of talent that Cassandra refers to it as, potentially not hiring FTEs, but looking at contractors, you know, or the gig economy, whatever you want to call it, because of the difficulty of getting an FTE, because of A, the quality, and B, the pricing and what have you. Sometimes it's easier just to say, I'll pay more on a per hour basis. I don't have the loaded costs anyway, and I'll just deal with a contractor, get me over the hump and try and, you know, figure it out. So I think that's a little bit of a trend. I don't know that that's going to be permanent. I think the working from home is, to some degree, there's going to be some level of permanency with that. I don't know that the 5-day work week is ever really going to come back like we know it today. I also see a lot of companies doing split schedules when they say, hey, after January 1st is now the target I see. And then you got to deal with the whole vaccine mandates and all of that. But suffice to say, some of you might be coming in on some of our financial firms are saying, hey, the investment team is going to come in on Monday and Wednesday. The traders are going to come Tuesday and Thursday. And we're going to have that kind of rotational split schedule. And then from a compensation perspective, we're seeing more frequency in terms of payments. So traditionally, you get a bonus and everything at the end of the year. Now they're trying to say, hey, how can we incent people? Let's do quarterlies. Let's even do some monthlies. And they don't always have to be cash bonus. They can also be non-cash related, like, perks and non-salary type things. We see some of those things happening more. So more frequency of payments and different types of payments.
Gotcha. So, no question. So I'm gonna sort of summarize the next question up. And I'll put it in the chat. So really, we talked about COVID, talked about the labor shortage, and we talked about DEI and ESG. So is there, like, rather than reactionary to these things, right? Is there a way to bulletproof yourself so that if whatever the next thing comes up, happens, that everything's in place, ready to go, policies, planning? Like, have you seen that sort of insight that's sort of being created? Because we've been hit by 3 perfect storms in a row, right? And I think I'm on Bob.
I was hoping you were going to Cassandra. No.
Yeah. Okay. So,
Okay. I think at the end of the day, there's, I don't know that there's a bulletproof plan. I think that change is a constant here, and you just have to be flexible and adaptable. I think you need to have leverage technology to have the tools to enable you to kind of adapt and try and stay ahead of things. I think you have to offer attractive compensation plans to keep people that are higher than before. And you really have to go out of your way to communicate and identify who your rising stars and top performers are, because you don't want to lose them. I think that to me is the best thing you can do to bulletproof yourself, if such a term exists these days.
mm-hmm. Cassandra?
I would agree. There's no foolproof anything out there, but the one thing that I don't see people doing that we used to do is what I call stay interviews. Talk to your people, find out what is it going to take for them to stay, and just meeting people where they are. These are difficult times. People's mental health is all over the place. Their position on vaccination is all over the place, and just really respecting people for where they are, meeting them where they are. Our managers have got to have empathy. They have got to show appreciation like they've never shown it before, and provide, ongoing coaching and work flexibility. But I'll tell you, the number one issue is trust. You have got to trust your people until they give you a reason not to. It is literally the number one factor. And as we know, it was the issue about working from home for so long, right? Well, we can't trust that they're going to get their work done. Well, yeah, we can, and they do. So I would say all that coupled with incentives. Couple of the things that we see people doing to help is some are seriously considering a 4-day work week. And also the other thing we're seeing is that some businesses, they're limiting their hours so that they don't, overwork their existing staff. I mean, I know here locally, there are 2-3 different restaurants we would sometimes frequent on Sundays. They're now closed on Sundays, as an example. And it's, that's a restaurant industry example, but there are others as well.
Okay. I think we can use a lot from the agile methods. They're mainstream now in software, and they're being applied to business as well. So the idea is not to have a foolproof plan like Bob and Cassandra said, but to be adaptable. And to be agile means to be able to react to things that come. So you want very strict collaboration. You don't want people working alone, and you want people to be multidisciplinary and autonomous, so that they can react fast. And the bus factor, right? If one person gets hit by a bus, or two or three, the team will survive. This is an example. Of course, it's just a metaphor, right? If someone leaves, the team has to go on, and the company has to go on. And when new opportunities emerge, people have to have the autonomy to be able to make use of these new opportunities, rather than have central planning and say, oh, okay, look, this is what we're going to do. That's what we're going to do. So treating people like adults with autonomy.
Okay, so probably the last question I'm gonna I'll start with this one, and then so bonus and merit pay. Have you seen companies that are using this strategy as a temporary measure to, rather than across the board increasing salaries? Go ahead, Bob. Looks like you're about to say
Yeah,
something.
I definitely see, I think Cassandra made reference to this before, but merit sometimes is going up higher than ordinary as a result of what's going on. And bonus for sure, sign-on bonuses, and also changing the metrics. If you have a component-based bonus, in other words, 4 or 5 different factors contribute to your bonus, either lowering those thresholds to increase the bonus, and or changing the frequency of those bonuses. We see both of those happening.
And Cassandra?
I would just say we've really seen bonus plans increase ever since the recession, and they're not going away, because companies are using them as a way to not to have permanent pay cost, but to reward when the metrics are hit. And so it's kind of allowing them to keep their base commitments down, if you will. We still see merit occurring. It is slowly inching up, but the thing that always, I'll get a lot of calls. What's the merit budget going to be next year? What's the average budget going to be? And I always say to people, you know what? It's not just what's the market doing with the merit budget. Okay. It also needs to be about where's your employees as a percent of the market? If your philosophy is 100% of market and you're at 80% of market, guess what? 3.2% is not going to move you. Okay. Or can you even financially afford it? What can you financially afford to do? Don't plan for a 6% merit increase if you can't afford to do that. And they also don't look at all the other things they're doing. Have they done benefit enhancements? Have they done technology enhancements? Have they invested a lot of technology? Have they invested a lot in training of employees? And they just need to look at the full picture when they decide what their particular merit budget is going to be. It doesn't hurt to know what the market's doing, right? But it doesn't mean yours should be what the market is. So still a lot of people continuing to use merit pay, though. And I know the average right now is being reported as about 3.2% for next year. I don't think it's enough. I don't think it's near enough to hold on to people.
When you work in teams, it's easy to have, or it's easier to have OKRs and goals for teams than it is for individuals. If you start doing, OKRs for individuals, you kill collaboration. I'm going to, take care of my thing here, and, I can't be bothered to. So the problem becomes, okay, so you're going to pay by project, for example. A customer of ours, Copersucar, the largest sugar and ethanol company in the world. They did a specific project for a client of theirs, and they had 50 people, like a hackathon with 50 people brought in from different areas to find a solution, And how do you appraise a hackathon? How do you rate people in a hackathon? So they did a round with Percival, and they managed to, give the bonus to those people. So the issue becomes, like with schoolwork, right? If you have, 5 people doing the school project, 2 people do the work, and all 5 put their names there. And it's really important that this is done fairly. When you're going to give people bonuses, if there's a slacker, let's say, and they don't do much, and they get the same bonus as everyone else, people are, they get really resentful, and that's bad. So my focus is always on fairness and transparency. What is the fairest way that we can in the team's view, in the team's opinion. That's my hammer. All problems, look like a nail to the fairness and transparency hammer to me.
And Klaus, don't forget the parents that helped on the projects too. They get credit as well.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right.
So you know what's interesting though, right, is I really see bonus and I see bonus pay and retention, or sorry, bonus and outsourcing, some of those staff as a temporary measure to sort of, give the illusion that you could be competitive salary-wise, right? So, if you have to hire somebody and you're not offering the top amount, you can't get into that. Well, is it wrong to say, well, if you make it 3 months, then you'll get this, right? And it's a one-time fee, and it's not added to the salary, or is that not, or is that too easy to see through, right? In keeping talent or hiring talent.
Well, it's kind of like your hiring bonuses. I mean, they know that's a one-time hit, right? And that's not going to come back. Versus your bonus plans that have metrics, they have to be hit and have to be reset, all the time, that sort of thing. So it's a little bit of two different animals there. But, especially think about sales folks. A lot of times, we'll give them a draw, let's say for the first 3 months or 6 months, while they learn the job and learn the company and all this. Well, why? Why would we give automatic, draws? Why wouldn't we set up goals and milestones and things that they have to hit and show that they can do? Klaus mentioned it earlier, competencies that they can demonstrate, behaviors, those kind of things. And yeah, if you do all that, we'll pay you. But kind of getting away from this automatic payment, if you will, for payment for performance.
Cool. Okay, so anybody else want to add something in? Because we're going to wrap it up here soon.
Good.
Nope. All right, so how can we get a hold of anybody if you have any further questions? You can, and feel free to talk over your specialty here. So Cassandra, I put your contact information up. If you have a phone number or want to tell us a bit about who you typically target or who you typically help, feel free to do so.
Sure. Well, let me give you a phone number. It's 317-589-8529. We've been in business 16 years now, helping clients. We've worked in over 50 different industries, and we have the ability to work across the United States. Do just about anything compensation related other than payroll. But, main projects are helping clients in that kind of small to medium sized space, although there are many times we get called by large clients because they just need more hands. Everybody's operating pretty lean these days. And so we're able to help with just about any kind of compensation project that's out there. The only thing we do not do is we don't do any qualified executive compensation work. So Bob might do some of that work, but if you're talking about stock options or ESOPs, that kind of thing, those are the areas we do not operate in. But outside of that, we want to be your trusted partner for Total Reward Solutions.
And what was the name of your book, Cassandra?
It's called Compensation Sense, SENSE 101. That is available on Amazon. And if we happen to have any human resources people on here who have accreditations, PHR, SPHR, you can get research credits through SHRM for completing the book and taking a small quiz.
Cool.
Thank you.
And Bob?
There's my email and my website. My phone number is 201-803-9801. And we provide compensation management software that enables you to automate your pay plan. At the end of the day, we just provide a very secure and highly configurable platform that enables you to manage all of the comp in a centralized repository, therefore mitigating risk by sending unsecured data throughout the organization if you're using spreadsheets. We also provide a fully auditable program so that you can always tell who did what and when. Sometimes it's hard to do that. So from a compliance perspective, if you don't have that, it can become an issue. The benefits of using a product like Compose is that you can dramatically cut your administration time by 50% and more by using an automated tool like this and improve your data integrity. So that's what we're all about, and I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Bob. And Klaus.
So those are my contacts there. LinkedIn works works very well as well. Klaus Westerveld on LinkedIn. And Percival is the only tool to help teams, collaborative teams, set fair salaries. If you want, to set fair salary for your team, and it's a collaborative team, multidisciplinary, it's really hard to do performance appraisals. Percival is your tool.
All right. All right, everybody. Thanks for your time. And no questions. So we'll talk soon. And anybody feel free to reach out to me and I can connect you if you're having some issues. But appreciate Bob, Sandra, Klaus. Thank you very much. And good information. Appreciate it.
David, thanks, and nice to
Thank you,
meet you,
David.
Cassandra and Klaus.
Yeah, you as
Pleasure
well.
meeting you guys.
Thank you,
Yeah.
David.
Bye-bye.
Talk
Bye.
soon.
Bye now.